East Coast, here we come. The series is off to Pennsylvania for stop number 4 at High Point Raceway. Things are looking pretty interesting. We have 2 guys returning to the series. The weather looks pretty unpredictable. And of course, this is our first time heading east this season in motocross, so bike setup could come into play as well. This is our race day update show where we go over the injury updates, the rider storylines, track weather and schedule. We even go over some rider statistics for fantasy and betting purposes. It's pretty much everything that you need to know before the gate drops. Alright, the first thing we're going to get into is the injury updates, and the good news is this week we have Triumph's Jalek Swoll returning to the series. We did mention this last week in this same show that he should be back, and sure enough, he's going to be out there, so love to see that. Unfortunately, his teammate Styles Robertson is still out dealing with those wrist issues. It's not clear if he's going in for an 8th wrist surgery or not. The team did say that he's going to miss at least 2 to 3 races, but we got to saw him post how unstable his wrist was on his story, and that thing was so unstable. I really hate to see that for him, and I'm not sure how you would get that stability back without surgery. Next, we have the 4-star Yamaha guys that are out. Max Anstey is still recovering from that leg injury that he suffered in Supercross. It sounds like the earliest we'll see him back is at round number 9, and we might not see him at all in motocross. Daxton Bennick is still trying to recover from his concussions. It'll be interesting to see when he tries to come back, because I do think he wants to show some stuff before the end of the season because he needs a ride next year. Pierce Brown is back on the bike. Not sure when we'll see him back racing. Cole Davies is still recovering from that broken arm and nose that he suffered at the very end of Supercross. He's getting closer to making his return, but definitely still a ways out. Sounds like he might be on a similar timetable to Max Anstey. In other good news, Seth Hamaker is also returning to the series after missing last weekend at Thunder Valley. It was announced at the last minute that he's a little bit too banged up to race. That was really unfortunate to see because he's pretty much been the only guy on that team to stay healthy throughout the whole season so far. But anyways, it's great to have him back already. As far as his teammate Cameron McAdoo, he's obviously still out with that ACL reconstruction. He did say that he's still a few months out from returning to the series, but he's also cycling quite a bit, trying to get back into shape, so that's good to see at least. Jet Reynolds is back on the bike and getting ready for a return. He will not be with us this weekend. He should return after the break at Southwick. Carson Mumford is still dealing with that ankle injury that he suffered in Supercross. It was originally kind of played off as no big deal. It looked pretty bad. He is also back on the bike, but he will not be racing this weekend. Evan Ferry is also back on the bike after his Achilles tear. He's still a couple of rounds out though. Look for him to return at Redbud. And now we have a more serious injury update. We saw Trevor Collop go down at the top of the hill at Hangtown when that rider crashed right in front of him. He did end up breaking his femur, and unfortunately, complications have arose from that. It sounds like he was alert, responsive, and fully cognitive going into the hospital. And after the hospital put him in traction, he became unresponsive. And later, it was determined that he had, quote, many strokes. So now, unfortunately, he has brain damage visible on an MRI. After initial tests, doctors believed that there was a hole in his heart, and that would essentially allow the bone marrow to go into his bloodstream up to his brain, and that's what was causing the stroke. So on Monday, he went in for surgery to get that hole closed up so that way they could stabilize the femur. But as they went in to do that, they realized that there was no actual leakage there. So the doctors did more tests to try to figure out where the leakage could be coming from, and they decided that it was likely his lungs. So on Wednesday, he went in for another procedure to try to close up that possible leakage path from his lungs, which they ended up concluding was also not the path. And as of Thursday, they still don't know how the bone marrow was getting to his brain in the first place. So right now, Trevor's in this kind of scary limbo where they can't stabilize his femur with the femur surgery because they don't want to do more brain damage until they establish the leakage path and stabilize that. He's already been in the hospital for 2 weeks, so definitely send your prayers out for him. As far as the 450 class, Chase Sexton is still out. Steve Mathis of Pulp MX seems pretty convinced he's coming back for Redbud, but there's no official confirmation of when he will be returning. Justin Barcia is still out with his knee injury. He's been cycling a lot. He's back on the bike. Also, interestingly, we did get confirmation this week that Club MX did officially send him an offer, which he did not respond to in time. In my opinion, that would seem to indicate he's probably going with Ducati next season. Dylan Ferrandis is still dealing with that stress fracture in his leg. Probably going to be out for most of motocross, maybe even all of it. Jason Anderson tweaked his knee in Moto number 2 last weekend. Thankfully, he's back this weekend and he's going to give it another go. And lastly, we have a true storyline here. Grant Harlan is returning to the series after only missing 1 round. He went down to Hangtown, broke some ribs, He's back at it. He seems pretty motivated because he definitely didn't have an ideal Supercross season, but he was really coming out strong in Motocross. You know that he's trying to stack some points and get directly into the playoffs. He's definitely capable of doing it. We saw him earn a number in the low 20s back in 2023 because of how good of a motocross rider he is. We all know that motocross athletes are some of the toughest people in the world. Hopefully, Grant can stay off the ground, but either way, he'll be out there as well. Moving on to the 250 points and rider storylines. At the top of the field, obviously, is Hayden Deegan. He now has 144 points, and even though he did lose last week, it feels like now he has an absolute stranglehold on this championship. I think you can honestly say that now everybody in this class has either had a bad moto or a bad day, but unfortunately for everybody else, Hayden Deegan's bad day is still a 2-2, and it's pretty hard to close large gaps in the championship if you're only gaining 6 points a weekend. And this motocross championship isn't the only thing that he has a stranglehold on. He also has an 83-point lead in the SMX championship. So as of right now, he could literally just not race this weekend and still be your number 1 seed going into the playoffs by a large margin. Second in the championship, now 25 points back, is Joe Shimoda. And really what seemed to hurt Joe the most last weekend was just bad starts. He still looked pretty solid, but it was far from the second place finishes that we're used to seeing him get so far this year. He was well outside the top 20 off of the start of Moto number 1. He did climb all the way back up to 9th, and then he salvaged a much better finish in Moto number 2 with a 4th place finish, finishing 6th overall, but definitely lost a lot of points compared to what he did at the first few rounds. Third in the championship, kind of quietly, we have Garrett Marchbanks, and he had a really good weekend last weekend. He came charging up through the field for a late race push to get on the podium in Moto number 1. Then he had a bad start in Moto number 2 and came back to an 8th place finish, tying Levi Kitchen for 3rd overall. And those points were good enough to move him up to 3rd right here, 45 points behind Hayden Deegan, which means he's the only other guy who is within 1 race of Hayden right now. Literally everybody else in the field could not pass Hayden in the points even if they went 1-1 and he didn't score any points this weekend. Right behind Garrett, now only 4 points back, is Chance Hymas. He definitely needed that. Going 1-1 was awesome. He had a perfect weekend. He was the fastest every time he was out there. He led every lap, got both hole shots. Definitely some really solid riding. Interestingly enough, he also got the hole shot in Moto number 1 here last year, and he did finish on the podium overall on the day. Granted, he was passed by Ty Masterpool and Hayden Deegan in the motos, but he still rode really good here. So if you combine that with his potentially newfound confidence, look for him to definitely be a contender this weekend. Rounding out your top 5 in the championship, 9 points behind Chance, is Levi Kitchen. He pretty much did the exact opposite of Garrett Marchbanks last weekend. Struggled in Moto number 1 off the start, had a great ride in Moto number 2, finishing on the podium. Luckily for him, since Moto number 2 is the tiebreaker, he ended up on the overall podium for the day. He's right here 5th in the championship. Definitely a rough start to the season, but it's awesome to see him turning it around as well. I don't know that we're going to see any breakout rides here this weekend. Last year, he had a pretty rough start in Moto number 1, well outside the top 30, worked his way back to a 10th place finish, but then he started inside the top 10 in Moto number 2, and he finished in 9th. Levi's a great rider, and he's definitely capable of winning at any time, but I'm not convinced that it's going to be this weekend. I am looking forward to seeing him grow as the season goes on, and as he gets more and more up to speed though, and I'm sure by the end of the season he'll be contending for moto wins. Then, only 1 point behind Levi, we have Tom Vial, and Tom's just having a pretty boring year in my opinion. He got another solid, quiet, not very impressive top 5 finish last weekend. He was top 5 here last year. He's an amazing rider, but at the same time not very flashy. I was really hoping that he would come out and contend for this championship. Unfortunately, it does not look like that's going to happen this year. I'm really curious to see what happens when he moves up to the 450 class next season. Personally, if I had to predict, I think we'll see him finishing around the same range as Colt Nichols is right now. Then 5 points behind Tom, in 7th, we have his teammate Julian Beaumer, and he's definitely plummeting down the standings right now. He was 3rd in the championship not that long ago. Last weekend, he went 16-15 for 17th overall. I know he had a big crash in Moto number 2. I have no idea what happened to him in Moto number 1. Either way, that definitely stings, but it sounds like he's alright. He's going to be racing with us this weekend. Last year, he did fight his way forward in both motos, finishing just outside the top 5, so he definitely gels pretty well with this track. That being said, the conditions could be quite a bit different this year, so we'll have to keep an eye on that as well. 10 points behind Juju in 8th, we have Ty Masterpool, and the story with Ty right now is that he has one good moto in him. The good news is that one good moto is getting better each and every weekend. There's been rumors of him throwing up at every single round so far this year, so hopefully he's starting to get past that. And remember, this was that iconic race last year where we saw Ty get Mitch Payton Pro Circuit's 300th win. Ty started well outside the top 5 in both motos, fighting his way forward for 2-1 moto finishes, tying Hayden Deegan and winning the tiebreaker with his win in moto number 2. So you know he has this one circled on his calendar. The question is going to be, how good is he feeling right now, and what kind of a start can he get? What's going to happen with the weather? Still a lot of variables, but personally, he's going to be the guy who my eyes are on as the gate drops. 9th in the championship, 6 points behind Ty Masterpool, we have Casey Cochran. He's definitely ahead of a lot of the guys that I would expect to be up here at this point, but he's been riding good, been getting good starts, and he did finish in 6th in moto number 2 last weekend, giving him a 7th place overall finish right behind Joe Shimoda. Then rounding out your top 10, we have Max Voland, and he's been a lot more consistent. Nothing too flashy, just been right there, either barely inside or just outside the top 10. And if you do that consistently enough, you will be in the top 10 in the championship. He's actually tied with Casey Cochran right now. One thing that's kind of interesting is that, remember, this is the race last year where we saw in moto number 2, Club MX got that 1-2-3 start with Cody Schock, Jet Reynolds, and Mark Phineas. So I'm curious to see if that translates at all and Max can get a little bit better of a start, because he does seem to have pretty good fitness and speed. Then in 11th, 2 points back, is Michael Mosiman. He did not score points in moto number 1 last weekend. Luckily, he did come back for moto number 2 where he got a 7th, so definitely salvaged some points. That's why he's so far back, but look for him to rebound nicely this weekend. He's definitely been a pleasant surprise. It's awesome to see Michael out there doing so well. Then in 12th, tied with Michael Mosiman, is Mikkel Harup. It was awesome to see him get a good start last weekend. He did finish 7th in moto number 1, and then he made a pretty catastrophic mistake in moto number 2, but he came all the way back to 13th, which is pretty hard in this field. So he definitely has some speed, obviously some talent. He's starting to gel with that bike, getting things figured out. I definitely see at least a moto top 5 in his future. And while Jordan Smith is riding pretty good, he definitely looks like the best rider on this team right now. 13th in the points, 6 points behind Mikkel, is Drew Adams. And you might be thinking, hey, Drew's been riding awesome. What's he doing all the way back here? He even got top 5 last weekend. Well, yes, he did, but that was only moto number 1. He did not finish in moto number 2, didn't score any points. I believe that was due to bike issues though. Sounds like he's doing just fine, and he'll be lining up this weekend, looking to rebound. Then in 14th, only 1 point back, we have Jordan Smith. So he's definitely pretty solid, not that far behind his teammate. He did go 14-11 for 12th overall last weekend, so a little bit better than where he's at in the championship right now. And he has had some respectable top 10 moto finishes. He's definitely one of the guys. I think he just needs a little bit better starts and maybe some confidence. It sounds like he's probably going to be the 450 Triumph guy next year, so hopefully he can figure out this motocross thing a little bit better. But I'm also curious to see next season in Supercross, when him, RJ Hampshire, and Tom Viala all move up, who's going to be the best out of those 3. Then rounding out your top 15, tied with Jordan Smith right now, we have Dylan Schwartz. And I've been telling you guys, this guy has the speed, he has the talent, and he has the fitness to back it up. He actually finished 8th overall last weekend, so he's recovering from a slow start to the season. He is moving up in the championship right now. I actually have a little bit higher expectations for him, given the best circumstances. I think he can get a top 5 finish in a moto. He might need just a little bit of help to get there, but for the most part, he's fully capable and he's one of the better guys out there. There's also an interesting little battle between him and Max Voland as far as being the best non-factory rider in the class right now. In 16th, we have to jump another 10 points back to find Seth Hammaker. Obviously, he didn't score any points last weekend. He's going to be lining back up this weekend. Hopefully, he can stay safe and healthy. He looks really solid. He's not that far back in the SMX standings, so he's definitely looking to keep that going. 3 points behind Hammaker, we have rider DeFrancisco, and I've definitely had a little bit of concerns with him. He's been having a rough last couple of weeks. Luckily, he did have slightly better results last weekend. He was in the top 15 in both motos, so that was at least a little bit encouraging to see. That being said, against what I would have predicted, Casey Cochran is looking much stronger than him so far this season. I still generally think that Rider D is faster than Casey, but at the same time, the results are starting to prove otherwise. In 18, 8 points back from Rider D, we have Parker Ross, and unfortunately, he DNF'd both motos last weekend, so that definitely cost him. He's been off to a great start so far this season. Hopefully, he can bounce back really strong this weekend at High Point. I think he's a top 15 guy, and definitely could contend for some top 10s at some point if he continues to build. Then in 19th, 6 points back from Parker, we have Austin Forkner. And on paper, this is really disappointing to see, but at the same time, it's great to have Austin out there. He did almost get a top 10 moto finish in Moto number 1 last weekend. He's definitely building. Hopefully he can stay safe and at some point come out swinging. Might not be until next year, might not be at all, but I definitely still am optimistic about his future. It's awesome to have him out there either way. At this point, I think his goal is to just do every round, including the full playoff series, and so far he's on his way to do that. Then rounding out your top 20, 14 points behind Austin Forkner, we had the rookie debut of Caden Minear. He looked pretty good. He definitely looked like he was pushing a little bit too hard at points. He even said so himself. But you can definitely tell the talent's there, the speed is there, and the desire is there. I'm curious to see what he could do this weekend. I'm not really sure what to expect, but it is always cool to have added depth to the field, and I think he's bringing just that. Moving on to the 450 class, at the top we have Jet Lawrence. He has now accrued 145 points, so definitely a strong start to the season. Personally, I thought that he might lose Moto number 1 after those guys were all over him, especially once AP made the pass. I definitely started to get my hopes up, but he definitely smashed those hopes pretty quickly. It is absolutely incredible what he's doing out there. Thankfully, as much as he's been dominating so far this season, so far it hasn't been too boring. We did see Ken Roczen challenge him here a bit in 2023, so hopefully with the added depth that we have this season, maybe somebody can give him a run this year. Then in second, 25 points back now is Eli Tomac, so he's a full moto behind. It's definitely time to lock in if you want to stay in contention for this championship. I know that he's capable, but at the same time, Jet Lawrence is a freak, so you're going to have to start beating him. It's not looking too easy. You can tell he's trying his best with these little tip-over crashes that he has, and it's clear that at times he does have the speed to at least close in on Jet. We haven't quite seen him make a dominant pass like we did back in Supercross, but we did see Aaron Plessinger do it, so we know that it's possible. And speaking of Aaron Plessinger, man, this guy is awesome. It was so cool to see him go out there, get the lead. He looks super fast, super determined. I don't remember ever seeing him ride this strong back at Thunder Valley. We knew he could ride good at Hangtown, but nonetheless, he's a changed man. And this could be his ideal chance to get his first moto win and maybe an overall win. He loves the ruts, he loves the mud. It's hard to say exactly how nasty it's going to get out there, but even if it's not that bad, it's definitely up AP's alley. We saw him get his first ever Supercross win in 2024 when it was wet, and then we saw him get another one in the absolute slop this season. There isn't much that would make me happier than to see him get a win at this point, and I feel like this could be the weekend. And man, shout out to Johnny Hopper and Aaron for just keeping it real in that press conference last weekend. Personally, I feel like it's time that the sport kind of catches up to the rest of the sports out there. We don't need to be rude or anything, but at the same time, let's just ask real questions, figure out the stuff that people really want to know, and let's let these guys have some personality. We're tired of hearing the same questions with the same answers. So anyways, shout out to those guys, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, here's a quick clip.
Tomac may be going to KTM. Is it going to be, do you guys get along? Are you happy to potentially have him as a teammate? Hypothetically speaking, of course.
Hey, dude. You kidding me? Frick. I think, well, if that happens, I will have been teammates with Chase, Coop, Ryan Dungey, Tony Caroli, and now Eli and Marvin. Like, if that's not a solid lineup for teammates in a career, I don't know what is. So yeah, I'm stoked.
Anyways, 5 points behind Aaron, we have Justin Cooper, and he feels kind of like the same thing as Ty Masterpool to me in this class, but just with much better bad results. What I mean by that is Ty Masterpool's getting one good moto, one bad moto. Same thing could be said for Justin Cooper so far. It's just that his bad motos are not really that bad. The thing is, his good motos are really good. He's gotten a couple of second place finishes, and he has a moto podium in each of the races so far this season. Looking at his results from last year, he did finish in 5th overall behind all the guys that we've talked about so far, as well as Hunter Lawrence. But then again, he was right there. He started outside the top 10 in Moto number 2 and worked his way all the way back up to 6th. So he's definitely competent at this track, but I don't expect anything spectacular either. Rounding out your top 5, 5 points back from Justin Cooper is Hunter Lawrence. Personally, I was expecting a little bit more from him last weekend. He did get a moto win at Thunder Valley in 2024 against Jet, so I was thinking maybe a podium at least. Interestingly, he did go 4-4 for 5th overall though, so that had to be a bit frustrating. Still a solid top 5 finish, but definitely not what he was hoping for. He is clearly ahead of everybody else in this field right now, but it's also probably frustrating to be at the back end of this front group. In 6th, we have to go 22 points back to find RJ Hampshire, so like I said, a pretty big jump back to these guys. That being said, if anybody deserves some accolades to be right here in the championship, it's RJ Hampshire. His wrist is all messed up, it's missing a bone now, they're never putting it back, kinda crazy. He did technically lose 6th place to Cooper Webb last weekend, but they did tie on points. They each traded 6th and 7th place finishes, so he's right there battling with your defending 450 Supercross champion. Pretty good, especially considering he just had wrist surgery. I'm not sure that his wrist is going to stabilize or feel much better. That part is not clear to me, but if it does start to feel better, I'm curious if he can push a little bit harder and get a little bit better results. But even with that being said, he's still killing it, so it's awesome to see that. 7th in the championship, 11 points behind RJ Hampshire. We have the guy we just talked about, Cooper Webb, so it's awesome to see him starting to rebound after DNFing at the first moto of the series. He's going to have to push pretty hard if he wants to maintain that number 1 seed. Right now, Aaron Plessinger and Justin Cooper are starting to close in on him with those solid finishes that they've been getting. It's really hard to say exactly how it's all going to shake out with so many motos left, but if you just kind of average out all of their finishes the way that they've been finishing so far this season, the projections would tell you that Justin Cooper would catch up to Cooper Webb right at the end of the season, and Aaron Plessinger would also catch up to Justin Cooper and leapfrog both of them right before the end of the series, and potentially Aaron Plessinger could actually head into the playoffs as your number 1 seed. That's pretty crazy to think about if you consider the fact that he didn't score any points in either of the first 2 rounds of Supercross. Then again, Cooper Webb didn't score any points in Moto number 1, so that's essentially the same as missing 1 round of Supercross. Anyways, it's pretty clear that Cooper Webb wants to be the number 1 seed. It's going to be interesting to see if he can pull that off. He had a massive lead, especially after Chase Sexton pulled out of the series. But at this point, if either of these 2 guys who are behind him continue to stay consistent and he has another bad moto, then that lead is definitely going to evaporate pretty quickly. 4 points behind Cooper Webb, we have Jorge Prado. And man, I'm not sure what to say about Jorge Prado. I don't really want to say anything bad, but I really can't say anything good either. It's been a struggle for him right now. I'm really curious to see if he can turn this around at all. He was borderline not going to qualify for the motos for a minute there in qualifying. He only had like 1 more lap left and he was outside of the top 40. He clearly had the speed to do it, so I'm not sure why it took him so long to do that. If he ended up tipping over on that lap or something and didn't make it into the show, that would have been really crazy to see. But anyways, he's definitely still pretty good. He's had some top 5 moto finishes. Not sure exactly what's going on. I'm curious to keep an eye on this and how it develops throughout the season. Then, only 3 points behind Jorge, we have his teammate Jason Anderson, and he finished 12th in Moto number 1 last weekend, but then he DNF'd Moto number 2 along with his teammate. So things are looking a little rough at Kawasaki right now. If I'm Chase Sexton, I gotta be feeling pretty nervous right now, knowing that you're probably going to be heading there next year. Over this last month or so, that team is starting to look like a dumpster fire, so I'm curious to see if they can turn it around. Hypothetically speaking, if Sexton does go to Kawasaki and Tomac does go to KTM and Tomac keeps riding as good as he is and that team is as much of a dumpster fire as it appears to be, it would be pretty crazy to see Tomac come out and win a title or something and Chase just struggle all next year. Not saying I wish that upon him, I'm just saying things are not looking great for Chase right now. Anyways, we're talking about who's in the championship right now, and with that, rounding out your top 10, Joey Savacci is only 1 point behind Jason Anderson. He's still racing with that broken finger, but it looks like it is starting to heal up. He finished 9th in Moto number 1, but then he came back for 16th in Moto number 2. That still nabbed him a top 10 overall finish, and he's right here, just inside the top 10 in the championship right now. He also raced most of the Supercross rounds, so he's pretty high in the standings right now in the playoffs. Believe it or not, with that relatively solid finish last weekend, he did leapfrog ahead of Jason Anderson, and he's not that far away from passing Ken Roczen as well, which would move him all the way up to 6th. Granted, Jason Anderson could very well pass him back at some point, and Jet Lawrence is also on his way up to catching him as well. Nonetheless, he's definitely going to be a top 10 seed if he can finish the season. 8 points behind Joey Savacci. Just outside the top 10 in 11th, we have Malcolm Stewart. He did have a pretty solid overall finish last weekend, finishing in 8th overall, but that was with 1010 moto scores. So he's definitely not lighting the world on fire out here in motocross, but he's logging his laps, doing his thing, stacking his points. Speaking of SMX playoff points, right now he's actually your number 5 seed, and depending on how much longer Chase Sexton sits out, he could actually leapfrog into 4th. Also, it's worth mentioning that there were some rumors linking him to going to Team Triumph next season, but like I said, it sounds like Jordan Smith is actually going to be your 450 rider over there next season. It would seem that Husqvarna, Gas, Rockstar, whatever you want to call the team, has convinced Malcolm to stay with them, so he should be teammates with RJ Hampshire next season. That's obviously not confirmed, but either way, it's awesome to see Malcolm out there doing his thing. Then in 12th, 8 points behind Malcolm Stewart, we have Valentin Guillaume. And he actually had a pretty quiet, pretty awesome race last weekend. He finished 9th overall, finishing as high as 8th in Moto number 2. So he definitely has some good speed. Looked a little bit better than he did at Hangtown. He's now moving up in the championship just a bit. It's awesome to see the Rock River guys helping him out, and I'm curious to see if he's going to really get on a team here at some point, or if he's just going to continue doing this. I'm also curious to see if he stays for Supercross next season or not, because if we get guys like him and Pat Terrell and then Hampshire, Vial, Smith, all joining Supercross, that would be pretty interesting to see all these new faces in Supercross next season. And then speaking of Benoit Patrel, he is right behind him, 11 points back, sitting 13th in the championship. He's on that HEP Suzuki team, and he looks pretty strong. He definitely looked really good at the opening round of the season. He was actually pretty vocally upset about the fact that they shortened the second moto at Hangtown, and then he didn't score any points last weekend. So hopefully he can bounce back this weekend. It sounds like the not scoring points issues was mostly bike related, so I do expect him to bounce back strong this weekend. Then in 14th, now tied with Pat Terrell, we have Cody Schock. And dang it, Cody, it was awesome to see you get that whole shot and lead laps, reminiscent of his heat race wins in the 250 class in Supercross. I definitely think we were in store for a top 10 moto finish in that moto. Unfortunately, Cody did end up going down. He pushed all the way back up into the points, so shout out to Cody for the effort, shout out to Cody for the great start. And fun fact, Cody did whole shot moto number 2 here last year. Granted, that was on the 250, and it didn't last very long, but nonetheless, he probably feels pretty good coming here. He just got a whole shot last weekend. He whole shotted here last year. Let's see some more good starts, Cody. Rounding out your top 15, 7 points behind Cody Schock, we have Colt Nichols. It sounds like he was suffering from the same bike troubles that his teammate Pat Terrell was in qualifying as well as moto number 1. Luckily, he was able to pull at least one good moto out where he finished in 9th, so it's great to see that he does have that top 10 speed and fitness. That being said, we've yet to see it consistently, and that is why he is back here in 15th. Then in 16th, 7 points behind Colt, we have Grant Harlan, and that's with him not even racing last weekend. So like I said in the injury updates, we're going to see him pushing through broken ribs this weekend. You know he doesn't want to lose too many points. Right now he's only 3 points behind Valentin Guillaume, and he's tied with Cody Schock as they all push their way forward in the overall SMX standings. With some good results and a little bit of luck, he could even push his way all the way into the top 20, but on the same hand, he could fall outside of the top 30 and technically miss his chance to compete in the playoffs at all. In 17th, now tied with Grant Harlan, we have the Estonian Harry Kulas. He's actually still just outside the top 30 in the SMX standings, so he's definitely making a push to get his chance into the LCQ. He actually quietly had a really good result last weekend, finishing 12th overall, so definitely much better than he's had so far this season. That being said, we've seen him have good results like this in the past. There's a reason that he's rocking the number 42. He did earn a lot of points in motocross last season, so don't be shocked if you see him get a top 10 moto finish at some point this year. Then in 19th, 2 points back behind Harry, we have Derek Drake, and it was so nice to see him come back and get 11th in moto number 2 after not scoring points in the first moto and really struggling at Hangtown. I was definitely concerned after we saw him get off to a pretty good start in Paula. He did not do good at Hangtown, and I was starting to get concerned that he was still really suffering the effects of that Lyme disease. He's definitely not fully recovered from it, but he's been treating it for quite a while now. It takes at least a year for it to really get cleared out of your system. So I was definitely concerned that he was not doing well. But anyways, he did come back for an 11th in Moto number 2. So hopefully he can build off that and continue to stack some more points. Then rounding out your top 20, we have Benny Bloss. He has a grand total of 18 points, and he is now 8 points behind Derek Drake. But interestingly, he has scored all of those points last weekend at Thunder Valley. He did actually give it a go in Hangtown, but unfortunately he didn't score any points. Then he came back rock solid with 13-13 moto scores, and that was actually really crucial for him because right now he's 18th in the overall SMX standings after not scoring any points at the first 2 rounds. And that is essentially the last position that gets you directly into the main event. With those 18 points, he is now 41 points ahead of 19th, but that's Jorge Prado. So he's definitely going to have to keep it going and have a really solid season. I don't think Beta is planning on going to all the rounds, so likely he will fall outside of the top 18. But even if he does go to all the rounds, he has Jorge Prado and then behind him RJ Hampshire, both trying to fight their way into the top 18. So while 41 points is quite a gap and he did look pretty strong last weekend, I don't think he'll be up here much longer. But no matter which way you slice it, it was pretty cool to see him go out there and score 2 solid finishes last weekend. Moving on to the schedule and weather conditions. The schedule this week is quite a bit earlier, depending on which round you're comparing it to. It is 2 to 3 hours earlier. So what that means is that race day live will now be at 10 a.m. Eastern and the race itself will start at 1 Eastern. This week, the 250s are back to going first again, and the halftime show is back as well. As far as the weather, there's definitely some precipitation in the forecast. It looks like it might hold off most or all of Friday night. The riders were able to do press day and ride around. The track looks pretty good, but sometime around midnight, a thunderstorm is supposed to start rolling in, and it's supposed to be drizzling throughout the day, with it really starting to pick up around the time that 450 Moto 1 kicks off. So definitely don't expect a fully conventional race. It might not be a full mud race, at least not in 250 Moto number 1, but I do expect the track to get pretty beat up, and it's probably going to be a slop fest. Alright, moving on to our rider statistics section. Before we get too far into this, I just want to put a giant asterisk at the front of all this and say, guys, it's probably going to be a mud race. You can listen to this, you can take it into consideration, but be prepared to throw most of it out the window because a lot of things are probably going to happen that are out of these guys' control. It's likely not going to be your typical race. If you're betting, I would just not bet this week, honestly. That being said, a lot of us are playing fantasy and we still have to make the best decisions that we can. So with that being said, at the top right now is Jet Lawrence. He's probably going to be most of the people's picks to win this weekend. I do think there's going to be an argument when we get to Aaron Plessinger in just a little bit, but it is pretty hard to go against Jet. He has won 5 out of the 6 motos so far this year. He's first to the finish line pretty much in every single race. The only time that we saw him not win the moto was when he supposedly missed a shift on the start and got a quote-unquote bad start, which was like a 5th place start. And Jet does seem to do just fine here. Last year, even though he was only 2 weeks removed after that gnarly Hangtown crash, he did go 1-1 against Chase Sexton and Hunter Lawrence, who had just beaten him the round before. So really no red flags for Jet Lawrence. As far as Eli Tomac, a little bit less data to go off of. I really only want to extrapolate off of what we've seen so far this year. He's been struggling a lot more off the starts when compared to Jet Lawrence. He tends to average about a 5th place start on lap number 1. And I don't think we can really overlook Moto number 1 last weekend when he couldn't get around Hunter and just got stuck in 4th place. That being said, when he does get a good start, we saw what he can do. And we also know he has the speed even as late as Moto number 2 last weekend. He did start to close in on Jet. Obviously, he did seem to be pushing quite a bit because we did see him tip over. I know I did say I want to only extrapolate off of what we've seen this year, but I do think it is worth mentioning that he has won here at High Point 3 times. As far as Aaron Plessinger, I do think there's something to be pretty excited about here this weekend. He actually has a better average finish than Eli Tomac. Tomac is only slightly ahead of him in the points because he did get that moto win. On top of that, his average starting position is about 2 positions higher than Tomac. So he's definitely not on Jet Lawrence's level, but still better than Tomac, which is helpful. But really, I feel like the main factor here is going to be the rain. I don't have any recent memories of Aaron Plessinger racing motocross in the rain, but the last 2 years we've seen him be very successful in Supercross when it is wet. He now has 2 Supercross wins, and both of those came on rainy days. On the surface, it's easy to go, yeah, it's raining, Aaron likes rain, great. But there's another factor here that you got to consider, and that's somebody like Jet Lawrence, who already has a 25-point lead, knows that stuff like racing in the rain can take you right out of a moto and cause you to lose all 25 of those points that you have built throughout the season so far. So he will probably not be as inclined to push it and risk it as much as he normally would, not to mention the bikes could overheat a lot easier, where if you're Aaron Plessinger, you really have nothing to lose. While he is technically still in this points battle, he's way more in it to win a moto or an overall than he is to win this championship, and I guarantee you he will risk it. He will push his bike as hard and as fast as he can if he needs to, where guys like Jet and even Eli are going to probably conserve it at least a little bit if their bike starts smoking or things like that. So definitely keep that in mind if you guys are wanting to risk it. Not a bad pick for the win. As far as Justin Cooper goes, he's been getting pretty good starts, but like I said when we talked about him earlier, he's having one good moto and one okay moto. He's definitely a top 5 guy, and he does seem to be at least a small level ahead of Hunter right now. The question really is, can he try to get ahead of one of these other 3 guys that we talked about? And the answer is yes, but only one moto. So in my opinion, until we see him do it in 2 motos and put a whole race together, you really can't put him ahead of any of these other guys. That being said, his average start is slightly better than Plessinger and significantly better than Tomac. He's even started in front of Hunter in 3 of the motos. And one thing we know about mud races is that the guy who gets the actual hole shot has a really good chance at winning if he has race winning speed. We've seen it plenty of times before. Maybe he could pull something like that off. As far as Hunter Lawrence, he does have the second best average start of the season so far. Definitely not quite on Jet's level, but still significantly better than every other rider in this field. That being said, he's definitely the 5th best guy in the championship right now. He has a pretty good rivalry going on with Justin Cooper right now. Both of them have an average finish of about 4th place. Looking a little bit outside of your typical top 5, we have guys like RJ Hampshire, Cooper Webb, Jorge Prado, Jason Anderson, and maybe even Joey Savacci and Malcolm Stewart. I think the chances of anyone besides Hampshire, Webb, and maybe Prado putting together 2 motos solid enough to get a top 5 overall is pretty slim, but I'll at least look at these 3 just in case you guys want to consider them. Looking at Cooper Webb, he has been extremely consistent, getting all 7th place finishes until Moto number 2 last weekend, where he pulled off a 6th. He's gotten 6th overall for 2 weeks in a row now, and he's only trending upward so far this season. I do think there's a pretty massive gap between him and the top 5 in the overall speed throughout the whole moto, but if he was going to get a top 5 right now with this field, I think this would be the weekend he could do it. Looking at RJ Hampshire, I think he's a little bit better of a dark horse pick than Webb. Even though Webb did beat him to take 6th place in Moto number 2 last weekend, he did get 6th in Moto number 1 and backed it up with a 7th in Moto number 2, which is something we haven't quite seen from him. It would seem that the wrist has been holding him back a bit, especially as the day goes on and he gets more worn out in that second moto. Maybe with a little bit of a slower track and some of that RJ sendiness, he could get in the top 5. And as far as Jorge Prado goes, I can't really recommend you put him in your top 5. The only stat that suggests you should do that is the fact that he did get 5th in Moto number 2 at Hangtown, but you have to remember that Tomac was not up there. That being said, something like that could easily happen this weekend where one of the guys is not up there. Coming over from racing in Europe, you would think he has a lot of mud experience, but from my understanding, he doesn't have that much mud experience, so I wouldn't necessarily tip the cap to him in that respect. But we do know he is a talented rider, and maybe the slower speeds could help him right now because he's definitely off the pace, but maybe this would be more of an equalizer for him. That being said, I can't recommend it, but if you want to put him in there, not a terrible idea. As far as the Rocky Mountain wildcard this week, it is 12th place, so that means you're going to be looking at guys maybe like Savacci, Stewart, Gio, Patrell, Schock, Nichols, and maybe even Harlan if he's feeling good enough. So there's a lot of different ways you can look at this. The first rider I want to talk about is Grant Harlan because we have the least amount of data with him. He did get 12th at Fox Raceway going 14-11, and then he did back that up with a 14th in Moto number 1 at Hangtown before he crashed and got injured. So he's definitely in the ballpark. Looking at last weekend's results, Harry Kulas did get 12th overall, but that was with a 15-12 moto score. But keep in mind that 12th in moto number 2 was with Prado, Anderson, and Patorell all with the DNF, and Cody Shaw crashed early in the moto as well. So realistically, I don't think Harry Kulas is a good pick for 12th right now. Looking one above, we have Benny Bloss, and he went 13-13 for 11th. But you have to consider that he's beating Prado and Anderson overall, so he's going to bump down probably at least 2 spots, maybe even 3 by the time Patorell gets back out there. Above him, you have Joey Savacci, who went 9-16 for 10th overall, and he's consistently been right around that 10th place mark. That 16th place in moto number 2 is a bit of an outlier, so I do expect him to be able to maintain that top 10 or so position. Valentin Guillot, ahead of him in 9th overall, is a little bit of an exception to that rule though. He's been a lot more sporadic. He has been improving throughout the season. He almost got a top 10 overall at the opening round, and then he barely was inside the top 20 at Hangtown, and then he got 9th at Thunder Valley. He's not somebody that I feel good at all about putting in 12th, but he's definitely somebody who could get there. It's also worth mentioning that he is 12th in the points right now, but realistically, if Patorell had not DNF'd both motos last weekend, then Guillot would probably be in 13th and Patorell would be in 12th. Looking at Patorell, he got 10th at the opening round, and then he finished in 13th in Hangtown. So he's definitely been hovering right around that same place as well. And like I said, if he did not have those bike troubles, he would probably be 12th in the championship right now. As far as Cody Shaw, he's also been right around this same 12th place finishing position, but he's also crashed in one of the motos in 2 out of the 3 rounds so far. The only race that we've seen him complete was Hangtown, and interestingly enough, he went 11-12 for 12th overall. So he's also right there. Also in the moto that he did not crash last weekend, he finished 11th as well. Personally, he's going to be my pick for the wild card, but at this point, it really is kind of a crapshoot as far as who could get this 12th place wild card, so I don't want to spend too much longer on it. Next, I just want to let you guys know that I am planning on doing my first live show immediately after this race. So if you guys enjoy this coverage, make sure you come check it out. I want to give us a platform to kind of chat about the race that we just saw, talk about some of the things that I noticed and what it means for the series as we move forward. I already have some pretty cool things in mind as far as talking points, but I'm sure some more stuff is going to happen today that will be pretty exciting to talk about as well. Anyways, if you want to jump in there, I'm planning on going live roughly an hour after they finish. They should be all wrapped up by about 5:30 Eastern. So my plan is to go live around 6:30 Eastern. Make sure you guys keep your eyes out for that. It's kind of just something I'm going to experiment with and see how it goes. And with all of that being said, if you guys made it this far in the video, you are truly awesome. You are the reason that this channel is growing the way it is. And I really can't do it without you. So thank you guys for watching this far into the video. And I will see you in the next video, hopefully on the live stream.